see white lies dancing between the lines. She's an atheist. Carousels in her mind, spinning all in her eyes. She's an atheist.
Hello and welcome to the Digital Freethought Radio Hour on WOZO Radio, 103.9 LPFM here in Knoxville, Tennessee. We're recording this on Sunday morning, October 9th, 2022. I'm Larry Rhodes, or Doubter 5, and as usual, we have our co-host, Wombat, on the line with us. Hello, Wombat.
Hello, it's me, the Wombat. It's nice to meet everybody.
Our guest today is John Richards from England. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Digital Freethought Radio Hour is a talk radio show about atheism, free thought, rational thought, humanism, and the sciences. And conversely, we'll also talk about religion, religious faiths, gods, holy books, and superstition. And if you get the feeling that you're the only non-believer in your town, well, I'll bet you're just not. In Knoxville, in the middle of the Bible Belt, we have over 1,000 of us in the Atheist Society of Knoxville, or ASK. And we'll tell you more about them after the mid-show break. Wombat, what's our topic today?
We're talking about design, and I can't think of a better group with a better design name than Ask for an atheist group. Isn't that wonderful?
Oh, that's right. You should ask. Keep asking those questions.
Yeah.
I still remember that business card I found, and I was just like, this is just the coolest thing possible. Okay, but Atheist Society in Knoxville, definitely check them out. Great.
Where did you find that card?
So you had given me that card the first day we had met when I went to the meetup group. And I had it whenever I accept cards. I remember I didn't look at the back of it until like I already got home, and I was just like, "Oh, Atheist Society, ask." That's fantastic. Yeah. I love that. That's so good.
I left back in the early days of ASK. I printed cards on my own computer and left them everywhere, so that people would find them. And I was just wondering if you'd found one of those somewhere.
Hey, I put it up on our bulletin board at work when I was in Knoxville.
Oh, all
right,
pretty good.
So, guys, I want to catch up, see how everyone's doing, and then we can delve into the topic of design and what we mean by it, because it means probably different things to different people. So how about this? We'll open it up. Larry, tell me how you've been over the last couple of weeks, and what do you think design means to you?
Well, last week I wasn't available for the show because I was on vacation.
Thanks.
And I spent most of the week just playing computer games and just generally taking it easy. But on the weekend when we do the show, I was in West Tennessee visiting my niece, and that was very nice. So
nice. It
was all good. Enjoyed it.
Cool. And what does design mean to you, my friend?
My design?
Yeah.
Well, when someone, an entity, a person generally, lays out a plan to build something, and then they follow that plan to create the thing that they're going to build. It's pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward, you would think, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. John Richards, you're all around the globe and anticipating even more spots to globe trot. But how you been? Don't show off too much, and tell me what design means to you.
Well, I've been okay, thank you very much, and doing my usual scheming and wheeling and dealing.
Love it.
And having fun. This is the advantage of being retired. You can do what you want, pretty much. So what does design mean to me? Well, it's the first part of making something. You can't make something without having an idea, a concept of what it's going to be. And that coming up with that concept and creating the detail of it, that's designing.
Yeah, it's sort of like setting out the outline or a goal for something, right?
Yeah.
Making intent, the foundation of intent.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the interesting thing about it is, for agents like humans, it can be done from blank. I mean, you can start with a clean sheet of paper, nothing on it at all, and that's where you make your design. Which is very different from evolution, of course, because evolution doesn't start from a blank. It's the opposite. It starts with something that exists and then tries to modify it. It's a bit
hold
like...
up. Now, every Christian will tell you, every scientist says that evolution says the world came from nothing, but that doesn't make any sense. What are you saying?
Well, evolution, of course, doesn't deal with how the world began. It just deals with how the diversity occurred. We've got a good
very well.
explanation for diversity, but we don't yet have a good explanation. We've got some hypotheses, but we don't have an agreed theory for how it all began yet.
Right. Right.
But the thing about evolution is it would be like in sort of design terms, it would be like going into your designer's shop, the studio where he does a design, giving him a tank, as a military vehicle, and saying, I want you to turn that into a jumbo jet. That's what evolution does.
Right. Yeah.
That's not what creation does.
I love the way how you said it at first. It's the first part of making something, but along with that comes an intent to make a particular thing. It's not just, hey, anything that works is fine. It's more of like you're trying to get to a defined point of creation or a product. And it's sort of like in my head where if I gave that sheet of paper and I gave it to like 4 people and I said, design something, and at the end of the day, there's just scribbles all around that piece of paper. There's like screws on one corner because they didn't want to work together. There's like a bird on one side. Someone drew a tree on the other side. I'd be like, you didn't design anything. Sure, you try to make something, and this paper is different than when I gave it to you, but there's no coalescence of intent. You have to design something together or make a singular thing as a group, but you didn't do that. There's no intent for what you guys are planning on making. And I find like, what are those 4 kids called? That's evolution in a sense, because evolution is very much I'm throwing everything I possibly can on the wall. I'm going to see, I don't even care if it works or if it doesn't work, but if it does work, fantastic. That's great. Now we have some biodiversity. Now the next, environmental change, maybe it kills some things, maybe it doesn't kill some things. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to be different at every opportunity. And the mutations that come about through evolution are not designed or planned out ahead of time. They are literally random changes in DNA that cause slight mutations in offspring and some diversity. Larry, what do you think?
Well, absolutely. It implies intent, but also don't forget, I'm sure you don't, that there are rules involved. There are chemical rules and physical rules, physics involved. All of the design, all of the evolutionary changes have to follow those particular rules, even from the very start, or we couldn't get where we are. Nothing would work if it didn't follow those rules. And they're enforced by the laws of nature and the laws of physics.
The way I think about it is, instead of saying as rules, because it implies there's a rule maker, there's simply limitations. There's physical limitations. There's chemical limitations. Yeah. And it's not like I can put marshmallows into DNA. Like, that's not going to work. But like, I can work with certain base groups. And the sad thing, and this is an actual thing, is while there are chemical limitations, there can be cases where the chemical limits are pushed too far, and the thing that is produced through evolution is not capable of sustaining itself through life. And,
not viable.
Not viable. And life is filled with a plethora of these non-viable forms that either suffer or are stillborn or never make it to a point where they have a fair chance of survival in a cutthroat universe. And so it's really unfortunate, because we do have this appreciation for, the world as if it was created by a grand designer. But unfortunately, I would say like a lot of this doesn't seem like it was intentionally made. It seems like we have a scenario where we're just operating through trial and error, physically and chemically wise. John Richards, what do you think?
Well, I want to say a bit about constraints and the laws of nature, because the laws of nature, they're not laws in the sense of this is what you can do and this is what you can't do. They are what we have observed nature doing.
Right.
And they don't actually restrict nature in any way. There's no sort of barriers to the ends of them. In fact, they're just models that we have noticed happen. And in fact, we've changed them periodically for better models when we discovered that they don't really fit.
Right. Yes.
For sure.
and I like to think of it as well as it's not a law, it's more of a prescription. The laws of the universe are more prescribed by just observers of the universe at best, and we come up with,
but not proscribed.
right. There's
Yes.
always this hunt for intent by dogma or religious minded people when they look in the universe, because
Yes.
they need that intent, because they need an intenter, they need an
Mhm.
inventor, they need a creator, a designer.
Yeah.
Larry, I think you just posted something. You want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, many times I'll be talking to theists and they'll say, oh, when I'm talking about evolution, they say, yeah, but that's designed by accident. That's what so all of this stuff came by accident. No, accident implies thwarted intent. You're trying to throw like a creator in your very definition of what you think evolution would be.
Yeah.
No, it's designed, like I say, by the laws of physics and the laws of chemistry working together. If you didn't have the laws of physics the way they were, there wouldn't be a world to have life on.
Right.
You didn't have the chemistry the way it is, you wouldn't have beings on that world.
But language is a very persnickety thing, particularly English language. No offense, John, but like the English language, man, it's so rough. It's so rough. If only we could have something more, less baggage with every word. Because when we say the laws of physics, right?
Yeah.
A theist can hear that and be like, well, then who made the laws? Right.
Yes.
Well, we did. We're the ones who described the laws and created the laws. And sometimes the laws need some tweaking. We don't always get them correct.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But if with the worldview of there is a creator, there is an intenter, there is someone who designed all this, a law is a very appealing term to describe limitations that we found in the physical world and prescribe to certain rule sets, right? By saying a law, you think to yourself, well, I know how laws are made. They're made by a person who has authority that pans them down to other people, and that could be my God. And what better analogy is there for a creator of the universe is humans decide how humans live, but a God decides how reality works. And those are both laws. That makes sense to me. I'm ready to go out of here. I passed physics, right?
You're right. The English language, any language really, it's not just English, has ambiguity. And what I say goes into your head and has a different connotation. Very unfortunately, the word law is one of those very ambiguous words, because in the legal sense, if I was speaking to a lawyer, he would know what he means by the word law. It would be an edict that has been decided by authorities, and that there are sanctions for disobeying. But that's not what we mean by laws in science. We just observe something so frequently, we think it's likely to be true.
That is such a salient point, because it's just a question of what your background is, what your education is. And I can tell you this, as an engineer, as a scientist and an engineer, right? I wear both hats. We design a lot of things in our labs, but design, the word, has become a very controversial term, I've noted, because when I try to talk to people about the work that we do, and then we maybe transition into more of a religious philosophical conversation, I find myself using the same word, design, in both cases, where it's like, well, the world's designed like blah, blah, blah. Oh, you just said design, therefore there must be a designer. It's like, well, I don't know a better word that I can say succinctly. Oh, I'm totally open to it.
Cool, go.
Why don't you give it to me? Give it to me.
Well,
the whole point of the show is to figure this out.
Okay. Well, for a long time, I assiduously avoided using the word design in connection with life and any living thing, because I knew that it would go into the ears of creationists, and they would assume that it was their designer what done it. And I even had an argument, a disagreement with one of our national icons, national treasures, and a broadcaster and scientist called Dr. Alice Roberts, who up until recently was the honorary president of Humanism UK. And I met her some time ago, and I said, I watched your television shows, and every time you said this has been designed to do that, in relation to some fossil or something, I threw my slipper at the screen.
So she's like, at least only 2 times. Why are you getting so upset?
Yeah.
I've only had to.
But I said, no, she's had a whole series. She's a number of series. She's a very
How many
great
slippers do you have, John
broadcaster.
Richards? How many slippers do you have? Or do you just sit with a pile of slippers next to you, the telly, and just like, there it goes again, there it goes again. All right.
Yeah,
Or
it's on a
TV.
string. It's on a string. I can reel it in again.
That's design. That's so great.
The thing is, I said to her that, you annoyed me by saying that word. Why didn't you say adapted? That's a perfectly good word. They adapted. And she said, listen to this. She said, we've got to reclaim language back from the creationists.
I like that idea too, honestly. I do
Yeah.
like that as well.
Yeah.
Larry.
Well, one point I always like to make when I hear these, I'm on Facebook a lot. I do a lot of arguing about theism and atheism. And whenever I see someone post a design argument, I always post a meme because I don't want to type in all this stuff every time. That points out that design doesn't get us any closer to a God than deism. It doesn't point to any particular God that we've ever worshipped in the history of mankind, or some God that we don't know anything about, even if all of the design claims were true. If we gave up and said, yes, okay, it was a God, doesn't mean it was your God, doesn't even mean it was a God. It could have been a simulation designer. We could be living in a simulation. It doesn't get you to your God.
My favorite God is Unkalunkalu.
Uncle
I thought it was
Unkaloo.
the sewer god. Okay, go on ahead. You want to?
No, that's what you've mentioned there is my favorite goddess.
Oh, my bad. They don't qualify? Okay, never mind.
It's not Juju at the bottom of the sea, I would think, since you
Guys, I like the idea of using adapted. I want to throw out a story of what prompted this show in the first place too. When I was Friday, I was doing a seminar on how we design things in our laboratory. And I brought up a really great high magnification picture of a fiber that we're producing. It's like a hollow tube that has to be strong under high pressure. So the walls of the tube have this very porous-like material because we designed it to be structurally rigid and have a very high structural integrity and tensile strength and all that stuff. But when you do a cross section of it, it looks just like a bone. It looks just like that spongy material. Yes. And a girl who was watching the show or watching my seminar was like, that looks just like a bone, right? And I was like, yeah, it kind of does. That's not by accident. What we were doing when we were making this fiber was we asked ourselves what was the most structurally stable and resilient kind of form factor that we can develop. And we found like this very porous structure was a great way to handle stress from any sort of direction.
Well, so that's right.
We didn't stumble in it through a bunch of trial and error steps. We looked into nature, and this is where I made the mistake. I said, we looked into nature to find what had the best design.
Oh, no.
And then and made the fiber. And in my head, I'm like, oh, I said the D word. Oh, no. Is that a problem? And I stumbled a little bit, and I just kept going. Thankfully, though, the people that I was talking to were both atheists. They were all atheists. So, like, it was all good. But in my head, I'm like, lucky. I need a better word for this. I feel like I do. What do you think, John?
Well, you're absolutely right, because not only has nature, open air quotes, designed, close air quotes, everything to fit a purpose, but also so your spongy bone and your hollow bones, they are the best structures for rigidity.
Right.
That's why tubes work, and you can save all the material that you would have had in the middle if it was a rod, make it lighter by taking that middle out, and the outside is still as strong. So nature has come up with that air quotes design, but not only that, nature has designed things like that several times.
Right.
So so it's redesigned and then redesigned, and it often comes down to the same design because that's the best physically.
Yeah, Larry.
And if you'll notice that if you look at things that artificial intelligence have designed, they tend to follow the same type of thing. It's open and that it has a lot of air pockets in it, but it has a lot of structural connections in there that they seem willy-nilly. They go in every different direction. But when you look at the overall thing, it has the outside purpose design is correct for the function, but the inside is just mostly air, but with crisscrossing supporting structures.
So you guys both brought up really great points. John, as a amendment to saying design, maybe I could have said, if you look at the nature for what's best adapted for structural stress, then you would see like we just basically pinpointed our design towards that. And when we could have used, for example, artificial intelligence, because we do have something called generational development, which is sort of like a program that designs things through iterative process on a computer, and it will typically design things based on trial and error and stimuli that we program into a model, and it'll build the most structurally resilient model. It'll probably look exactly like the tube that we already have. The problem is that it's a program that was designed by people, but the method that it uses is almost identical to evolution, where there's millions of drafts that just don't make it, and only one iterative process that keeps getting improved on. Whereas the tube that we designed, we were just like, what's a good fit here? Let me look at, bones are really strong. Yeah, we're going to design it kind of like bones. In like 3 steps, we were there and we made it in like about a month or so. So I find like what design does is we had the plan. We had the intent to make a very particular thing. We designed that specific thing. We made the process to build that thing, and then we made that thing, and that's fantastic. But there was very little scrap behind, very little money and time wasted. And that, in my opinion, is the value of design when it's actually in operation, because there's just so little waste as a result. It's a very lean process when you use it properly.
So
Go ahead, John.
I want to revisit the story I was telling about meeting Dr. Alice Roberts and talking about the use of words and how they are perceived. Because although she made the point, which is a good point, that we ought to be able to use language to mean what we want it to mean without it being polluted by these creationists who want it to mean what they want it to mean. That is a good point, but
that's a very good point.
We're never going to do it. I'm going to stick to too big a job.
Hold on. Isn't like 50% growing 51% of non-believers now? Like, this is the time to strike. Why give up now, John Richards?
Well, that's true, but nevertheless, it's still too big a job. Changing the meanings of words is a mountain of a job. So I'm going to stick to using adapted. And I want to give you an example of how difficult a job it is to change.
I'm just going to throw out one thing. As a straight white man, you could say that, but listen, outside, that's happening all the time. Like, words are changing like every single day.
Oh, yeah.
The ire of like every established group is like, why are words changing? Changing. We make up new words every 4 hours.
Again, you're absolutely right. And you brought out straight white man because of the word gay, which of course has changed its meaning over the centuries.
Sure has. Yeah.
But the point is that we didn't have control of that. It was the population, the culture that made that happen. And me going out there and saying, when I say design, I mean adapted, is not going to cut much mustard, is it? And to give you an example of that, we had a prime minister called Margaret Thatcher a few years ago, who she introduced a tax that she called the community charge. The idea was, instead of charging buildings, you charge everybody. And the opposition referred to this as the poll tax because it charged everybody who was on the list of poll people, the people who had a vote.
Okay.
And she kept saying community charge, they kept saying poll tax. And eventually the country adopted poll tax as the name through the newspapers and so on. And eventually she stood up in Parliament and referred to her own community charge accidentally as the poll tax.
Right.
And you should have seen, I'm sure it's still a clip that you can find, you should have seen the hilarious reaction in Parliament when she said poll tax.
So the American version of that would be Obamacare. Because when
Yes.
Obama came up with, hey, we don't have healthcare as a nation, this kind of
Yes.
sucks. And
Yes.
everyone was like, we're just going to disagree with whatever you say because that's our job, is to be the lawyer of
Yes.
opposition.
Yes.
And Obama's
Yes.
like, okay, well, I'm just going to try to make a government Medicaid,
Yes.
that's federally
Yes.
regulated, supported, so that
Yes.
people who can't afford healthcare can get healthcare.
Yes.
Then
You wanted to widen.
Right.
You wanted to widen Medicaid. And
That's Obamacare. They're like,
yes,
don't
exactly.
call it after me. Don't call it after me. Yeah. Gave it 4
Yeah.
years. Next thing you know, it's like, it's Obamacare, guys. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, we know what
Well,
that is.
For sure.
This is language being weaponized. That's what that is. Yeah.
But the context of it can flip by the culture too. So like words that meant bad things, or were used in a perogatory manner, can flip to very good things and be embraced. And
Sure.
And I imagine, like, yes, it's not controlled by any one person, but we have a culture right now that is moving towards this non-believing position. And I think if we were just to clarify what we mean when we say certain things that are ambiguous, but still be firm with who we identify as, and maybe even use supplementary words along with that, I feel like that could be a really good way of just continuing the trend that we're on right now, where more people are, I think we have more critical thinkers now today than we've ever had in the past.
Well,
and
I hope I live long enough to see design being disentitied.
Yes, that would be fantastic. No, see, the thing is, here's the problem with Christianity. They change words too. And I know we're getting closer to the half, but it's not only that they change words, but they adopt the new words faster than the non-believers can go through changing it. So like when design came up, there was no Christianity concept of it. And then when science established that, like, listen, here are the limitations of the universe, blah, 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 they said, well, now what's intelligent design? There's design, and now there's intelligent design, and that's us. Even though you disambiguized design to mean no creator, we've now re-implanted a new version of it with intelligence that had to come from a higher authority.
I've got some stuff to say about that.
Oh man, I know we do.
Let's take it after the break, though.
After the break.
All right. This is the Digital Freethought Radio Hour in WOZO Radio, 103.9 LP FM here in Knoxville, Tennessee. Stay tuned for the second half. We'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back to the second half of the Digital Freethought Radio Hour. I'm Doubter 5, and we're on WOZO Radio 103.9 LP FM here in Knoxville, Tennessee. Let's talk about the Atheist Society of Knoxville for just a moment. ASK was founded in 2002. We're in our 20th year and have over 1,000 members. Wow. We have weekly in-person meetings every Tuesday evening at Knoxville Old City at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria. Look for us inside at the high top tables, or it's pretty weather outside on the deck. We also have weekly on Tuesday night Zoom meetings. If you'd like to join us on Zoom, email us at askanatheist@knoxvilleatheist.org or letschatse@gmail.com. You can find ASK on Facebook, meetup.com, or go to their website at knoxvilleatheist.org, or you can just Google Knoxville Atheist. It'll take you to us. By the way, if you don't live in Knoxville, you should still go to Meetup and do a search for an atheist group in your town. Don't find one, start one.
Start one.
That's right. Wombat, where do you want to pick up?
Guys, we're going to be talking about listener comments, and I'm sure we're going to delve into intelligent design. How about we meld the two together, and we'll start with one of the comments from First Aid Man 87. Thank you so much for posting to our thread with a very thoughtful comment. His comment's on intelligent design, and his comment is, intelligent design is just selected bias. If our planet was made of lava and humans drank that for whatever reason, religious folk would say that that somehow was designed for us because it was so unlikely. It seems to me that whatever unlikely thing results would be called design, when really any result is probabilistically really unlikely to happen. Just because we are one of them doesn't mean that one of them was predestined. This seems like an adequate response to any intelligent design argument. Thoughts?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. What gets me is that they use the watchmaker argument. Like you're walking along a beach or in a forest, you see a watch, you know that's designed, and they say, but by the same thing, everything else in the world is designed, and the cosmos designed. Well, then why would you notice that a watch is different? I mean, if everything in the world designed by man or by God was all designed, they would all look the same, wouldn't they?
Yeah. So what really sucks is there's so much circular thinking here, because like you need a frame of reference to make something a claim like that. And if everything's designed, then you don't have a frame of reference of what's not designed, so you can't call it true. But if you talk to Christians, sometimes they'll be like, well, God's not designed. Well, it's like, you haven't seen God.
Nope. He never shows up.
Show me what God looks like, and you're like, well, he's invisible, and you have a relationship with him. Like, well, you're literally just, at this point, you could have just said pixie magic, right? Like, there's no true distinction. If you
and every time they use the G word, they're talking about their particular God.
Yeah.
And every other religion in the world would say, no, it's our God.
Right.
And that's how In God We Trust made it on the money.
Right.
Because every religion can point to it and say, our God.
And the real frustrating thing is, it's not so much that I'm saying that, well, your God's not the product of design. I'm just saying, if you don't have a way to test that claim, you still don't have a frame of reference with literally everything else other than God is a product of design. You still don't know what something that's not a design looks like. So you can't come out with complete justification with a claim when you don't have any frame of reference to even make it. That should be one of the red alarms in your head, being like, whoa, I have a problem here. Unless if you want the conclusion to be true. And if that's the case, then yes, you do have a selective bias. So
what you're saying is, what characteristics do they look for in order to establish that something has been designed by their God?
Ooh, very nice. Yeah, that's a good one too. I like that. All right, another one, because this feeds off of Larry. Big Brown House commented, intelligent design is an old argument. Christians say that the universe looks like it was designed, which implies there's a designer. The starting point of the argument is to establish some means of distinguishing design from chaos. They'll talk about how we can investigate whether certain archaeological funds are natural formations versus ruins of a civilization or something like that. But then the argument concludes by saying that everything in the entire universe is design. So the original premise of their own argument is refuted by the conclusion. Now, when we look around, we have no way of distinguishing design from chaos, because they just concluded that there is no chaos at all, anywhere. Has anyone else noticed this other than me?
Point.
It's so frustrating. It's very true. I've noticed it. You need to have a frame of reference. You can't be like, every can of soda is Sprite. By the way, I don't know what things that aren't Sprite look like. Every item in my clothes drawer is a sock. By the way, I don't know what anything that's not a sock looks like. Everything in my utensil drawer is a fork. Anything that's not a fork, though, I don't know what that looks like, though. It's just like, you're literally making no sense. It's cancer. By the way, I don't know what things that aren't cancer look like. I wouldn't go to that doctor, right? So what are you to say that everything's by a product of design? Come on, guys. Come on, Christians. It's that easy.
Step up your game.
Yeah. And of course, intelligent design is a peculiarly American thing that was brought about by the laws, the federal laws that forbade the teaching of creationism as a science lesson.
Really?
So they had to come up with an alternative way of getting their ideas into science. And that's why they came up with the phrase intelligent design.
Right.
Got round the law.
Right. So we have to remember that, yes, words can change and we can come up with new words too, but so can Christians, so can religious people. And the problem is Christianity has a great marketing team because they are selling basically a product that costs nothing for them to make, which is essentially false hope. There's no production, there's no inventory. They can sell it, they can distribute it over any line of communication immediately, and people want the product because everyone's afraid of dying. And so
their complaint department is pretty much empty, because after you find out that the product isn't real, you're in no position to complain.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is when you're indoctrinated into this worldview, like how I was, and I believe Larry, you also have the same experience. You don't realize you've been drinking poison until, you know, someone else pulls you out of it, and it's almost as disconcerting as being pulled out of the Matrix. It's like, wait a second, I had a good time in the Matrix. I could eat and I can learn kung fu. Now I'm in a ship in a beat up sweater eating oatmeal every day. Like, this sucks. It feels like you've lost something, but you never really had a true thing to begin with. It takes a deeper appreciation for the truth to realize that Christianity is false. Not necessarily getting a perfect argument to realize that your reasoning is invalid. It takes a deep appreciation for knowing true things and false things. That's what gets you out of it. The critical thinking criteria. Larry, what do you think?
Well, I was just going to make a point. You were talking about it's really hard to get out of it because you don't know you're in it, and it's really hard to pull somebody out of it if they're thoroughly brainwashed. I was going to make a point that the only time a U.S. congressman was ever killed in the line of duty was trying to get one of his constituents out of Jonesboro, the cult of Jonesboro.
Wow.
It went down there to get him, get the congregant, and Jonestown sent him a contingent and killed him.
Yeah, and the saddest thing is the daughter of that lawman is also now in a cult right now. And think about that in terms of like one of the most infamous cults in the world that killed a person's father. The offspring of that person, who was like a young adult at the time, is now in a cult herself. It's not a fact that bad things happen to you, that you get critical thinking, or that you're born with it. It's that it preys upon people who think they don't need it. And so if you don't develop it, appreciation for true things and false things, and truly appreciate it to the point where you're willing to disregard or let go of falsehoods in the search of true things, even if you don't have them yet, you can at least take the position of, I don't know. If you can't do that, you make yourself very vulnerable to those who want to take advantage of you.
Yeah, and what's really bad is that religions tend to use two things that most people want. They want love and they want truth. And religions, will tell you that they own pretty much both of those terms. We are love. God is love. And the Gospels are truth. With a capital T.
Like Jehovah's Witnesses don't even call their religion Jehovah's Witnessism. They just call it the truth, right?
That's right.
Can't let them trademark that. Speaking of which, we had a comment from Classic Got, let's see how we read this. Classic Got to Me Giddy says, design also applies to religion. Take Buddhism. You don't need possessions. You should be happy without owning anything. Be nice and docile, or else you'll be reincarnated into a life of suffering. All the basic principles of Buddhism enable the ruling class to take advantage of the common people.
Like most religions.
And while I consider Buddhist values noble due to some of their inherently humanist principles, if you think about it from this perspective, it's still disgustingly obvious what this religion was designed to achieve.
Yeah.
And Larry, you make a great point. Yeah, that is almost part and parcel with every single religion out there.
Yeah, suffer in this world and have paradise in the next. And that really helps an oppressive ruling class.
John Richards, I'll let you make a comment. Go for it.
Well, Larry's just reiterated it, but you mentioned false hope, selling false hope. And Larry's given the example of offering paradise after death. And in this country, I may have told this on the show before, but in this country, a couple of years ago, we had a group of churches in the city of Bath who clubbed together, printed some leaflets and started standing on street corners, handing them out. And the leaflets promised that if you went and worshipped in their churches, you would have all your diseases cured. There's a whole list of diseases from A to Z. And at the bottom, it said, and any other condition. But in this country, we have something called the Advertising Standards Authority. And they were reported by a couple of skeptics to the Advertising Standards Authority, who instructed them to stop giving out these leaflets because they offered false hope.
Oh, criminal. Larry, go for it.
Well, a couple of things. We do have truth in advertising laws here. However, religions have never, ever been held to those laws. And generally, because 90% or 80% of lawmakers and law enforcers are all
Yeah.
part of that religion. The
That
other-
sucks too.
Yeah.
That
The other part was another point I was going to make is that the one thing that theists say that atheists take away from them from people is hope. And there's no reason in this world that you can't hope for a good afterlife if you want to. You don't have to join a religion, a structured practicing religion to have hope in an afterlife. You want to hope for an afterlife? Do it. There's
Right.
nothing stopping you. We're not taking anything away.
We don't have any doctrines.
Right.
There's-
It's gods
Right.
we don't believe in. I mean, a lot of us don't also believe in souls, but you can believe in soul if you want to.
You want
It's-
to if you want to go for it.
Design
Yeah.
your own heaven.
It's a
We've
great
got-
genre of music. What else?
Mhm. Yeah.
We've got nothing to sell. No sell.
Right.
John or Larry, you had made the comment that most religions have the idea of being docile and not rebelling against authority
Mhm.
and not wanting to have your own positions owned to you and just being nice and only concerned with what you're going to do in the next life. But I know of a religion, and we've had guests on the show who practice Satanism, and not like the sense of, well, who cares? I know there's two different versions of Satanism, but I feel like in both cases it's the idea of rebelling against dogmatic authority, valuing your possessions, valuing who you are, making a point to make sure that you aren't docile in the face of administrative changes on you. And I'm like, why isn't the case that the only one religion where you're fighting for your personal rights and freedom is the one that's demonized by Christians left and right? And it feels like, there is something to that.
Good point.
Anyway, we're going to go to one of our last comments today. And this one is based from an anonymous commenter, messaged me personally and said, actually, I'm still an atheist, but I wanted to come up with a justification for intelligent design. Proponents of intelligent design claim that the entire universe is designed for humans. And a common rebuttal is that humans cannot naturally exist anywhere in the universe. I mean, as far as we're aware, except for a small planet on Earth, a small part of Earth on land in moderate climates. But perhaps the people who claim ID or intelligent design is a thing, they mean that the universe can be conquered by humans due to us having the highest intelligence of all known species. Unlike other species, we can access all parts of the universe. I know it's an assumption, maybe some of it, but as we can understand the world and create solutions which other animals cannot do, maybe this is what they mean by intelligent design.
Whoa, wow. That's stretching
one
things.
at a time.
It is
I just,
one at a time. Well, let John, what do you got to say to that?
Well, I think he's casting a very wide net and trying to catch everything in it.
right.
There's no justification for that. And he started out on the right foot by saying that we can only survive in a very tiny part of the universe. So
Right.
in that case, surely the description unintelligent design should apply to the rest of the universe. After all, it's a failure, isn't it? If it was intended for us.
Yeah, all this black space and radiation. Oh my gosh, you kind of overdid it on that side. Yeah.
Yes.
No,
a
I
nice
mean,
screensaver. Go ahead.
I
Larry,
mean,
what do you think?
if that were the case, you would think that he would have put it, in his holy book. He would have put
Right.
some of that type of intent in his holy book. But according to the holy book, the earth is supposed to end with Jesus coming back and starting a 1,000-year reign of Satan ruling the earth for 1,000 years, and then it's going to be destroyed. There is no intent to go to the rest of the universe. And why the heck would he even create the rest of the universe in the first place if we're just going to live for 1,000 years and die after pretty much the Bible comes out? It just makes no sense.
My thought on this. Oh, go ahead. John.
When's the next rapture, guys?
Right.
Mm,
There's a
hadn't
time
heard.
for it. There's a website time
Yeah.
for it. There's a list of upcoming rapture events.
Yeah, we should make the
currently
point
posted
that we didn't get raptured. Nobody that we know of got raptured the
So
last couple of weeks.
yeah, so my idea is this goes back to the docile nature that's not necessarily enforced, but it coerced, perhaps is the better term, or encouraged in the most fair sense by religion. They want to have docile followers. They want to have docile rebuttalers or people who disagree with them, because that enables them to have more authority and power. And when you make a desperately incorrect claim targeted towards trying to continue to sell your false hope, you want people to be like, well, maybe they got a point too. Maybe we can all be right. Maybe they are making a sense. If I stand on my head, they do kind of have a point. It's like, no, listen, when someone says ID, it's important for you to speak up, because it's in being quiet that you give them more confidence to be loud about it. And what we found historically true is that the confident, loud voices tend to be the ones that people listen to the most.
Silence implies consent.
Silence can imply some consent, and in many ways, silence can even be betrayal in a situation like this. And the stakes are too high. The stakes are simply too high. When we have, as Larry pointed out, a majority of congressmen and senators and politicians all caught in this fold that we put ourselves in, where they believe in their own separate dogmas. They actually have authority to control other people's lives, and they can work in Congress together, both in the word and as their job title. We have a problem, especially when we elect them into like appointed offices that we can't.
Living in the South, it's even, it's the worst.
It's rough. It's so rough. So I say,
livings down here can be basically traced directly to the religious right, keeping our rights down, our personal rights down, in deference to the religion.
Yeah, I also say this. What they have is privileges. They don't have rights. They have privileges.
Right. They do. Mm-hmm.
I'm also going to throw this out too. Don't make an argument up for them. It would be my other argument too. Like, don't try to rationalize a bad argument for someone. Leave that to them. It's their job to do that for them. If they're saying something that makes no sense, don't be like, well, this is a way how it can make sense. Like, no, you still don't make sense until you make sense. I'm not going to do it for you. So it's up to the intelligent design people to continue to spout nonsense until they make their nonsense not nonsense anymore. It's not up for me to post ad hoc rationalized nonsense as is given to me. I have too many other things to think about during my day. And I'm not saying that's a me turning my brain off. That's just me recognizing that they have accountability for the things that they claim to be true. Let them come up with a method to determine if that's true or not. And in the meanwhile, they are in the I'm not considering them as a viable option until they come up with some sort of reasonable credit to put me on the list of things that I should be considering.
Right. Yes. They have the burden of proof. There's no need for us to act as advocates for them.
Right. And we should be willing to speak out when atheists have a bad reputation for being adversarially argumentative. But truly, if someone is making a case that is not true, it is worthwhile to speak up, or at least let them know, hey, until you have a better criteria to know if that's true or not, I'm not going to believe that. Or I disagree with that based on the fact that you haven't met your standard of evidence for it. And anyone else who thinks the same, feel free to have the position of, I don't know if that guy's telling the truth or not. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying you haven't made a point yet. So please establish that with some evidence, and I'll be happy to describe it. It seems if you're saying an intelligent designer made it, you still have this big gap of proving that an intelligent thing exists. And where's your criteria for that? You can't look at trees and be like, well, that's proof of it, because that's just proof that a tree exists. You can't look at a rock or a sponge or a bone and say, that's proof of my God, therefore my intelligent God exists. It's like, no, that's just a bone. That's just proof that a bone exists. And I can tell you how that bone came about with better methodologies through tested practices designed that was actually, or adaptations through life that we can track through a record, that's fairly accurate.
What they're often doing here is saying, I can't understand how that could have come about, that tree, without there being a God. Well, that's commonly known as the fallacy of personal incredulity.
Right. Yeah. Argument from incredulity. Yep. Larry.
We can't be talking about intelligent design without at least mentioning the Dover trial. You may be familiar with the monkey trial, what was it? What was the name of it? Scopes trial. Thank you. That took place a little bit south of where I live, down in, what was it? I can't remember the name of the town. Anyway, it's about 50 miles south of Knoxville in 1925. However, in 2005, there was another evolution trial in America called the Dover trial in Dover, Pennsylvania. It was a movie made on it by excuse me, Nova, called Intelligent Design on Trial. I encourage everybody to go out and if they're interested in the subject, go find that and find out how ID did not win that case. Intelligent Design failed, and mostly because they lied under oath to try to protect the fact that they claim the capital T truth,
because they put their faith above law, because they think they have the true ultimate authority, which is why it's so
absolutely
dangerous. Now here's a weird thing. If they just called it stupid design, I'm going to flip this under my head. If they just called it idiotic design, if ID stood for idiotic design, I don't know if I would have a problem with it anymore, because that would be a terrible way of designing things. And now I'm like, maybe there's just an idiot designer in the universe, a great big idiot that's constantly making birds with 3 wings, or kids with only half their hearts, or like
tails.
Or tails, and just like, I think I'm going somewhere with this. Oh, by the way, I got some other things to do, and he's just constantly distracted. I'm like, you might have a better argument down that road than what we appreciate in design.
Well, I'm offended.
Go on ahead, John.
I'm offended. I'm offended now because you've just blasphemed against Uncle Unkaloo.
Oh no, my bad. I do have one last thing I'd like to say. I'd be remiss if I didn't say it, but this is an example I bring out all the time. But a lot of people imply that the complexity of the universe is proof, part and parcel of intelligent design. But I think we know for a fact that if I had 2 flash bulbs, or I have had 2 light bulbs, and one took 1 step to screw into a hole, and one took 1,000 steps to screw into a hole, but made the same light, I think we can argue that the one that's simpler in design is the better design. And that's not just for light bulbs. It's true for bicycles. It's true for car engines. It's true for anything. That simplicity is the hallmark of design. And I'm looking at a room full of guys, and there's 6 nipples across those. We don't need any of them, yet we have them. There's so many extra body parts that we got that we don't need. There's so many extra parts to the universe that exist that are far more complex than they need to be. And as John Richards says, small, tiny, minuscule part of the universe that we're in, surrounded by all this other stuff, it seems like, you could have simplified this so much more than it was now to get to more or less the same test or trial that we're under. The complexity that's been added to the universe is not an indication of an intelligent design. If anything, it's just more proof that we are on our own capable of coming up with what we have now through our own understanding, through our own trials and adaptations. And because of that, we don't need to give credit to a God. We can say, hey, we're here, we're in control. Let's make this better. Let's use real design to make this society and tools that we have available better. And stop wasting time on all these old books and dogmas. Think of what we could do if we all, billions and billions of minds, put our minds to improving the lives that we have here on this planet, this life. We make this life better. We can do that right now.
And concentrate on how much more so we're alike than we are different. Right. We keep concentrating on the differences. No, we need to make a better world just for us as a human species.
Yep. You think about it, just believe in one less God. That's it, for the most part.
Going back to our earlier conversation about the ambiguity of words, you used the word own a lot in your little speech just now.
Own.
Because you wanted us to form our own opinions, having critically examined the evidence, rather than just take somebody else's downloaded view. Yes. The trouble with that is, own has another meaning, because it means that something belongs to you as well. And a lot of people possess their religion as though it's part of their identity.
Yeah.
And that they do that because they don't have any evidence for it. They just accept it emotionally. And that's why I gave my example just now of saying I'm offended because you've dissed Uncle Unkaloo because that's their mindset.
My boss used to say, I was a programmer, and I used to get upset if he dissed my program, if he disrespected it, if he said something bad about it. He says, "Oh, I understand. Your program is your baby."
Right.
Their religion is their baby. You identify with it, that type of
exactly.
thing.
Yes.
You have to get to the mindset where it's like the personal ownership is different from the accountability, or
Mhm.
you want your identity to be separate from the things that
Yes,
you
yes.
might be nearby or in possession
Yes,
of,
yes.
right? And that's a hard thing to do. It really is.
I've got a 4-word expression for that.
Got it.
Ideas can't be your baby. Oh, it's 5 words.
All right,
Well, it
that's
can
the
be.
end of the show.
Yeah.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. We'll make that the title
Yeah.
of today's show. How about that?
Yeah.
Larry, why you mind taking us out? I think we're near the end.
Yeah, but
John Richards, where can we find your stuff at?
right.
Freethought channel. That's where it's at. And I'm focusing on taking down Islam more from now on, because a lot of people have complained. Are you only targeting Christianity? Oh, no, I'm not.
No. Plus,
I wanna
Islam
take down
seems to be more of
Buddhism.
a problem for you right now than
Yes,
Christianity does.
Yeah,
It
I want
is,
to take out
yeah.
Buddhism because a lot of when I was in California, a lot of people who are Christians is if Christians too cool for me or too bad. I'm now a Buddhist. It's like now you're just getting Buddhist ammunitions. They have the exact
Right.
same problem. My cat's shaking, scratching himself. That's why I'm shaking, because he's shaking the table.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's an earthquake. Larry, why don't you get me out of here?
Okay. My content can be found at digitalfreethought.com. Be sure to click on the blog button when you go there, though, where we have our radio show archives, atheist songs, and many articles on the subject of atheism. You can also find my book, Atheism, What's It All About, on Amazon. By the way, remember, everybody is going to somebody else's hell. The time to worry about it is when we prove that heavens and hells and souls are real, and we haven't. Until then, don't sweat it. Enjoy your life, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Take care, everybody. Say bye.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.